hallways. Just two people, choosing to be seen. Together. It started with a whisper. A client called to reschedule a pitch meeting. Then another postponed a quarterly review. And by the end of the week, one of their long-term accounts quietly transferred their design contract to another agency in Cambridge. No explanations. No accusations. Just silence, disguised as professionalism. Maya sat in her office, shoulders drawn tight, eyes scanning the latest numbers from finance. 3 lines of red where there used to be green. A polite memo from the board. We support you, but we need discretion. Code, of course, for fix this or fade out. Dante knew none of this until Friday night. He found her sitting cross-legged on the office couch, her heels off, one foot tucked beneath her. The room was lit only by the soft hum of the city through the windows, and an untouched cup of tea sat cooling on the table beside her. She didn't look up when he entered. They're backing away, she said flatly. One by one. He closed the door behind him. Because of me. No, she said quickly. Because of us. Because it makes them uncomfortable. He stepped closer. You're not thinking of backing down, are you? She looked at him then, really looked. Do I seem like the backing down type? He sat beside her. No. But you do seem tired. I am, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Not from the work. From the pretending. I spent years building a reputation that would shield me. Turns out, it was just a pretty cage. He reached over, gently took her hand. Then maybe it's time to stop performing for people who only clap when it benefits them. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. How do you stay so steady? I don't, he said. I just learned how to be still in the middle of noise. They stayed like that for a long while. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the windows like fingers drumming for attention. Inside, they didn't move, didn't speak, just existed in the same space, breathing together. Eventually, Maya pulled back, her expression more resolved than weary. I'm writing a letter, she said. A public one. He raised an eyebrow. Like, open letter? She nodded. To the people who think they can define me, and you, and what this is. Dante didn't say anything right away. Then, you sure? I've never been more. He nodded once. Then say what needs saying, but don't do it for me. She looked puzzled. What do you mean? Do it because you're done shrinking, not because you're trying to save me. I don't need saving, Maya. I just want standing next to. A small smile curled at the edge of her mouth. Well, then let's stand. 2 days later, the letter was published. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't long. Just a single page, plain font, signed in her name. Some will call this rebellion. But rebellion implies chaos. What we're building is something else. Structure, honesty, courage. If seeing a black man beside a white woman still stirs outrage in 2025, maybe the problem isn't the couple. Maybe it's the lens we still refuse to clean. The post went viral in under an hour. Local blogs picked it up, then design magazines. Then a late-night talk show host quoted it on air. And with that, the story shifted. They weren't a scandal anymore. They were a statement. Of course, not everyone celebrated. One afternoon, Dante arrived at a property in Beacon Hill, scheduled electrical repair for an older brownstone. The owner, a sharp-faced woman in pearls and a polished suit, opened the door with tight lips and arms crossed. You're from Carter Works? She asked. Yes, ma'am, he said evenly. She eyed him. You're the one from that article. He said nothing. She turned slightly, just enough for him to hear her say into her phone, He's here. I told you she was making a mockery of herself. Still, he did the job. Fixed the panel, checked the breakers, left the invoice on the counter, and when she refused to meet his eyes as he left, he didn't flinch. Back in his truck, Maya had texted, lunch at the studio? Bring paint hands. That afternoon, he met her at the new space she'd rented, a small storefront downtown. One half was already set up for her design firm. The other side was raw, open, with drop cloths on the floor and canvases leaning against the walls. He stepped in, wiping sweat from his neck. You sure about this? She grinned. I didn't buy this to hide. I bought it so we could build something real. He stared at the walls, then at her. You're really not scared, are you? I'm terrified, she said. but I'd rather be terrified building something true than be comfortable living a lie. He looked around, then down at his own hands, rough, calloused, stained from work. Then he smiled. All right then, let's build. And somewhere between the paint and the plans, between the brushes and the wires, between the silence they used to sit in and the laughter they were starting to share, they began laying the foundation for something that might actually last. The following weeks unfolded not like a storm, but like rain that refused to stop quiet, persistent, capable of reshaping everything over time. Carter Works and Maya's design studio shared the storefront, side by side. On one side, tools, fused diagrams, the smell of sawdust. On the other, palettes, brushes, and a wall slowly filling with paintings that looked like they were breathing. The sign above the door read simple and bold, Williams and Carter Studio. They didn't throw a grand opening. Instead, they started small. A handwritten flyer taped to a nearby coffee shop window. A post shared quietly on Maya's Instagram. Saturday Fix-It Day. Free minor repairs for seniors, veterans, and single parents. No questions asked. Come with a story or don't just come. The first Saturday, 5 people showed up. By the third weekend, they had a line. Dante brought 2 of his old apprentice buddies, Devin and Jalen Young. Sharp, hungry to do real work that mattered. Maya taught them how to hold a paintbrush the way she taught herself how to hold a grief-stricken heart. Firm, honest, unflinching. Their space began to change too. A mural went up on the inside wall sketched by Maya, colored in by neighborhood kids. It showed 2 hands on dark, one light building a bridge from scraps, bolts, and bright light. No signatures, just colors. One evening, as Dante rolled up the garage-style door after closing, Maya handed him a sandwich wrapped in brown paper and a cold root beer. You always feed the crew, he teased. You're not crew, she said, then added, your foundation. He gave a soft laugh. That sounds heavier than I'm used to. She leaned on the doorway next to him. You carry weight like it's oxygen. He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, then asked, you ever think we're pushing too hard, too fast? She didn't answer right away. Then, every day. But I've also learned that if you wait for permission to be who you are, you'll die with your voice still in your throat. He looked at her. You're getting poetic again. She grinned. Occupational hazard. That night, they didn't go home separately. Instead, they sat on the floor of the studio long after the lights were off, sharing stories of things they didn't tell many people. Dante told her about the time his mother taught him to rewire a lamp after their landlord refused to fix the lights in their apartment. He was 10. She said, you fix the dark by touching it, son, not by waiting for someone else. Maya told him about the gallery that once told her she was too urban for their taste. Right after offering to buy her painting at a discount, she left her name off it. They didn't kiss, but they didn't need to. Sometimes intimacy was just sitting close enough to hear the other person breathe, and not needing to fill the space with anything but presence. The next morning brought a new challenge. An email, anonymous again, sent to the local press, CC'd to the city business registry and Maya's board. It included photos of Maya and Dante at the mural wall, one of him holding a drill, another of her painting with children. The tone wasn't cruel, but it was pointed. Are these the optics Williams and Carter want to be known for? Charity work as branding? Romance as rebellion? Should professionalism come second to performance? Maya read it in silence, jaw tight. Dante looked over her shoulder, reading the words like bullets. They're trying to dress judgment in concern. Let them. I can make a statement, he said. Or I can step back. Give this room to breathe. She turned to him. Don't you dare. He blinked. She stepped forward. Don't you dare let them shame us into silence. This isn't about a picture. It's about people who've built their comfort on watching others stay small. You said you didn't need saving. Fine. I don't either. But I need partnership. And partners don't hide. He exhaled slowly. All right then. What do we do? We paint louder, she said. They responded the only way they knew how. The next Fix-It Day, they rolled up the door and invited in a reporter from a local nonprofit podcast. Maya spoke plainly. Dante didn't try to impress. They talked about the work, the kids, the repairs, the stories. And when the host asked what made them different from any other business downtown, Maya said, We don't build for applause. We build because people deserve to feel safe where they live and seen where they stand. The story aired that Sunday. It wasn't explosive, but it was enough. Enough for a woman in Roxbury to write a handwritten letter thanking them for fixing her mother's heater. Enough for a retired mechanic to drop off a box of tools he hadn't touched since his hands started shaking. Enough for 3 kids from the neighborhood to show up every Saturday asking to help fix stuff. That night, as Dante turned off the lights and Maya gathered brushes, she asked quietly, "You still scared?" He didn't lie. "Yeah." "Of what?" "Of how much this matters. Of what it'll cost. Of who we might lose." She nodded, then walked over, rested her forehead against his chest. "But we won't lose us," she whispered, and he believed her. Not because she promised, but because every day she kept choosing to stay, and so did he. The next chapter was already writing itself. With every paint stroke, every bolt, every breath, they refused to take in silence. The storm came not with thunder, but with a name: Walter Crenshaw. The first time Maya heard it, she was standing at the studio sink, rinsing paint off her fingers, watching the colors bleed like memories. Dante stepped in from the back office, a file in his hand, his face unreadable. "We've got company," he said simply. "Walter Crenshaw, real estate development magnate, owner of the Carter Works property and half the block around it." Maya raised an eyebrow. "And? He's offering to buy us out. Says we're sitting on prime commercial frontage. Wants to elevate the neighborhood's potential." Dante made air quotes with a bitter smile. "Offered a generous compensation package to dissolve the lease early." She dried her hands slowly. "Why now?" "He says it's about expansion," Dante replied. "But I looked deeper. He's been quietly buying up black-owned businesses on this street for the last year. Our success? It made us visible, and now we're inconvenient." Maya turned to the window. Outside, the mural glowed in the early evening light. Kids had drawn tiny stars between the 2 hands on the wall. She whispered, "He wants to paint over us." Dante stood beside her. "Unless we'll let him." The next day, Walter arrived in person. Tall, polished, white. He wore an expensive suit with an unbothered smile. His assistant, a young woman who barely made eye contact, trailed behind him, scribbling notes on a tablet. Maya greeted him at the front of the studio, dressed in overalls, paint still fresh on her cheekbone. "I don't do suits on weekdays," she said flatly. He chuckled, as if she'd made a joke. "Miss Williams, you're a very talented woman, and frankly, this community's lucky to have you. But you've got to think bigger. Imagine what this could become: a flagship art space in one of my new complexes. Your name, in lights. With the right backing, you could do more than murals." "I don't want my name in lights," she replied. "I want kids on this street to know that Hands Black Hand Scan build beauty that doesn't need permission." Ugh. Walter's smile faltered for the first time. Dante came out from the back. No smile, just presence. Walter straightened. "Ah, Mr. Carter. Still tinkering, I see?" "I fix things," Dante said evenly. "And I recognize rot when I smell it." Walter clapped his hands once. "Well, I see where this is going. But I'll warn you, both real estate is a machine. Sentimentality doesn't slow it down. If you're still here in 30 days, you'll be here illegally." He turned on his heel and left. The silence afterward was heavier than drywall. Dante paced. "He's not bluffing." "No," Maya agreed, "but he's betting we'll fold." That night, they sat on the roof of the building, knees touching, not speaking much. Then Maya broke the silence. "You ever lose something you fought for?" Dante nodded slowly. "Yeah, my mother's house. After she died, the city sold it over unpaid taxes. She lived there 38 years. Maya closed her eyes. "I won't let that happen here." Neither would he. The next morning, she walked into City Hall. Not alone. With her were 6 elders from the neighborhood, 2 veterans from the Fix-It crew, and Miss Eleanor, an 81-year-old with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue who wheeled herself right up to the permits counter and announced, "This is a protest. We brought snacks." They filed a motion for historic designation using the mural as community heritage. They submitted affidavits from local kids, seniors, veterans, small business owners, each one testifying to what the studio had become. Not a brand, but a home, a hope. Walter fired back with lawyers. They answered with people. A week later, the podcast host returned, this time with a documentary crew. A local news channel aired a segment, The Studio That Refused to Disappear. And one night, Maya walked out back and found Dante at the loading dock, gripping a letter. "They've frozen our account," he said. "Pending investigation. False claims workshop, safety violations, some nonsense about zoning irregularities." Maya took the paper from him, scanned it, her jaw locking tight. "This is war," she said. Dante nodded. "And it's just getting started." But she wasn't afraid. She walked up to him, placed her hand on his chest, right over the place where his heartbeat still drummed, steady and strong. "They want to bury us," she said softly, "but they don't know we're the roots." They stood there as the night pressed in, not speaking, not backing down, just breathing in tandem. And in the silence, something ancient passed between them, not just love, not just resolve, but legacy. The next chapter would not be about defense. It would be about defiance. It would be about standing not as victims, but as witnesses. Witnesses to their own worth, to each other's courage, and to the truth that no mano name, no suit, no threat could erase what had been built with open hands, honest labor, and unapologetic love. Dawn came gray and hard. Maya stood in front of the mural, arms crossed, hoodie pulled tight against the morning chill. Her breath clouded in the air. Behind her, the studio remained dark, closed until further notice by a so-called city order. But the mural still blazed with color, still showed two hands zoned dark, one light reaching toward each other. Still whispered to the block, "We are still here." Footsteps approached. Heavy boots on sidewalk. Dante joined her, carrying 2 styrofoam cups of coffee, steam curling up like prayers. He handed her one without a word. They stood shoulder to shoulder for a long moment. "They're setting the hearing for Friday," he said finally. Maya sipped, eyes locked on the paint-streaked wall. "You ready?" "I was born ready," Dante muttered. "But we're outgunned. He's got lawyers with last names longer than our lease." "I know," she said. "That's why we won't fight him alone." By noon, the studio's tiny back alley was filled. Kids, neighbors, veterans, local teachers and retired postal workers. Even the shy barber from down the street brought folding chairs and passed out water. They weren't protesting. They were testifying just by showing up. Miss Eleanor rolled in wearing a black beret and an old March on Washington button. "My bones may be brittle," she said, "but I still stand for justice." Someone had brought paint. A blank wooden panel leaned against the studio fence, and people began to add to it brushstrokes of memory. A kid painted his grandma's rocking chair. Another drew his dad's welding gloves. An elderly man painted his first Navy ship, sailing on blue waves. No one directed them. It just happened. Maya stepped back and watched the collage grow. Her eyes stung. Then a familiar voice rose behind her. Deep, warm, steady. "I spent a decade cleaning offices no one looked twice at," Dante said to the small gathering. "I used to walk past this mural after midnight, thinking no one knew it was there. But one night, she left the lights on." He turned slightly to Maya, and I realized it wasn't the paint that mattered. It was what she saw when she made it. The crowd fell silent. Maya looked down, humbled, then stepped forward. "There's power in building something with your own hands," she said. "But there's more power in saying no when someone tries to take it." The moment hung in the air like a spark. Then someone clapped, then another. Soon, the entire alley rang with applause, not loud or forced, but certain. The kind that said, "We're with you." But the storm hadn't passed. That evening, Maya found a plain envelope slipped under her apartment door. No return address. Inside, 3 printed photos. One of her walking home late, alone. One of Dante locking the studio gate. One of the mural half covered in black spray paint. No note. Just proof. She dropped the envelope on her kitchen table and sat down slowly, her hands trembling. Dante was at her door 15 minutes later, breathless. "I got the same envelope." They sat in silence, eyes on the photos. Fear curled around their ribs like smoke. Not the kind that screamed, but the kind that whispered, "We're watching." "Whoever sent this knows where we live," Maya said quietly. "They want us rattled," Dante replied. "It's working." He reached for her hand. "Only if we let it." That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, She pulled out a notebook, started writing. Not a manifesto, not a statement for the press, but a list. Names. Every person who had ever walked through the studio doors. Every child who painted. Every elder who taught. Every laugh that had echoed inside those walls. She filled pages, and by dawn, her hands hurt but her fear had quieted. Friday came cold. The city hearing was held in a municipal building with gray walls and fluorescent lights. Walter Crenshaw arrived flanked by lawyers in matching suits, smug and well-rested. Maya and Dante walked in with no attorneys. Just people. Miss Eleanor was wheeled to the front row. The kids sat in the back, fidgeting, dressed in their best. One clutched a crumpled drawing of the mural. The hearing began. Walter's attorney spoke first, polished, calm. This property has commercial potential. Our client's proposal would create jobs, generate tax revenue, and elevate the neighborhood's economic standing. Maya's turn. She stood. No podium, no papers, just her voice. I don't have slides or spreadsheets, she said, but I have stories. And then, one by one, people stood beside her. The veteran who found community again. The teen who stayed off the streets because of art classes. The mother who said her autistic child finally spoke during a music circle. Each voice built on the last, like a rising tide. When it was over, the room was silent. Even Walter seemed smaller. The council recessed. They'd announce their decision Monday. Outside, as the crowd spilled onto the sidewalk, Maya exhaled deeply. We showed up, she said. Dante nodded. We always do. She looked at him then, sunlight catching his jawline, and for a split second, she forgot about the mural, the lawsuit, the photos. She just saw him, and in that quiet beat between the chaos, she whispered, "Thank you for not walking away." He smiled. Wasn't an option, but as they turned to go, none of them noticed the man across the street, dark coat, phone pressed to his ear, watching them, not smiling, because some storms don't end. They just pause, waiting. It rained that weekend. A soft, soaking rain that draped the city in a hush. Maya sat by the window of her apartment, one hand wrapped around a mug of lukewarm coffee, the other tracing slow circles on the condensation gathering on the glass. Her eyes weren't on the street below. They were inward back to the man across the street, the one she hadn't noticed until it was too late. Dante had seen him later on the surveillance footage, standing half-hidden beneath a city bus stop, holding a phone, watching the crowd, watching her. You think he's working for Crenshaw? She had asked. Dante didn't answer right away. He just nodded once, eyes narrowed. He's not the kind of man who loses gracefully. Sunday night brought thunder, the kind that rolled in low and long, shaking the floorboards and making Maya's lights flicker once, twice. She stared at her living room wall, where the photos from the envelope were now pinned side by side like unwanted trophies. You don't scare me, she whispered aloud, but her voice caught slightly at the end, and in the quiet that followed, her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Miss Williams. The voice was male, crisp. This is Officer Howard from the 9th Precinct. I need to ask you a few questions about an incident involving Mr. Dante Lee. Maya sat up straighter. What happened? He's being held for questioning, the officer said. There was an altercation near a construction site. We need someone to confirm his identity and vouch for his whereabouts. I'm coming, she said instantly, already grabbing her coat. At the station, fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she sat across from a weary desk sergeant who looked like he hadn't slept in days. They said there was an incident, Maya said, breath short. Where is he? Room 3, the sergeant said, barely looking up. But just so you know, there's no formal charge yet. It's a misunderstanding. Maya's heels echoed against the hallway tiles as she walked. When the door to room 3 opened, she saw him Dante sitting at a steel table, hands clasped, brows drawn together not in fear, but in a slow, contained rage. Maya, he said softly. Her chest tightened. She rushed to him. What happened? Some guy said I threatened him, Dante replied, jaw clenched. He was painting over the side of our building black spray paint. I told him to stop. He swung at me first. I didn't even hit him. But they arrested you. He said I looked threatening. The words hung there like poison. Maya's face hardened. You're being framed, she whispered. Crenshaw's pulling strings. He looked up at her then, eyes sharp. That man at the mural. He wasn't just watching us. He was coordinating. We need help, Maya said. Outside help. They got it the next morning. Mr. Raymond Archerin, aging civil rights lawyer, semi-retired, with more stubbornness than suit, showed up at Maya's studio unannounced. He wore a brown fedora and carried a copy of the city charter under one arm. I heard about your mural, he said, and about Crenshaw, and about Dante being held. Maya blinked. You heard? Miss Williams, in this town, injustice travels faster than the morning paper. He walked right in like he'd always belonged there, scanning the room, nodding once. You've got the city council's attention. Now it's time to make them remember their own bylaws. That afternoon, Archer filed an injunction. Public property defacing, racially motivated intimidation, civil liberties violations. His paperwork made waves. And just like that, Crenshaw's team started squirming. But it wasn't over. That night, Maya got another letter. This one wasn't anonymous. It was typed, sealed with a formal letterhead. A real estate acquisition firm. Dear Miss Williams, our client wishes to extend one final offer for the property located at 116 South Halston Street. A generous figure, expedited processing, no legal entanglements. Consider this a courtesy. No threats, just precision, just pressure. The kind that didn't use fists, just erasers. She stared at the number on the page. It could have paid off her student loans, her mother's hospital bills, given her years of comfort, but it would have meant silence. She folded the letter neatly and dropped it into the trash. They don't know me, she said. And that's when she saw it through her window. Someone across the street, watching, again, but this time, she didn't flinch. She picked up her phone and dialed Dante. You free? She asked. Always, he said. Then meet me at the mural. It's time we told the city who we really are. That night, under the dim glow of string lights, with brush in hand, Maya repainted the parts of the mural that had been defaced. Not covered, but transformed. She turned the black spray paint into silhouettes, into shadows, into contrast that made the light stand out even brighter. Dante stood beside her, rolling paint along the border. This is war, he said. Not war, Maya replied. Reclamation. And around them, people